So, I've been talking to myself about sewing for about 2 hours now, and I think I need to redo the intro to properly tell you what it's actually about. What I want to go over in this video, tips and tricks, suggestions, just things that I've learned along the way in my journey, setting proper expectations, allowing enough time, running into troubleshooting, researching troubleshooting, knowing the correct vocabulary of how to troubleshoot, fabric content and the importance of that, like where even to get some fabric, mystery fabric, doing alterations on yourself, sewing fears of being a delusionally confident beginner. And I'm going to tell you what that means. That's what I'm going to be going over and getting into and just chatting with you about today. And I hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. All right, we are recording. I did not charge the microphones all the way, so I'm not sure how long they're gonna last for before they die. Hello everybody, my name is Caitlin and welcome to my Slice of Freedom, where I just talk about whatever I want to that makes me feel happy, fulfilled, things I'm interested in, which right now is sewing. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I've been sewing on and off for a little over 2 years now. I started back in 2024, and everyone who sews will know it's kind of something that's hard to stay consistent at, especially if you have other interests and hobbies and work and life. Just pulling at your time in all different directions. You know, it takes so much time with the prep work, the cutting of the fabric, the washing of the fabric, the ironing of the fabric before you actually get to sewing. And all of that is a little bit of what I want to talk about today, just my experience getting into sewing consistently. So I started a sewing Instagram called Caitlin's Wardrobe Dreams, where I did start sharing a lot of my projects, and that was really fun, and I really enjoyed sharing them and making some videos detailing my journey, my mistakes, what I wish I knew, what went wrong, how I sort of fixed it, just the whole entire learning process in my sewing journey and, you know, trying to complete these projects. And that's been really fun. I've been getting some feedback from other sewists online on tips and tricks, recommendations, all of that, and just, yeah, encouragement, which has been really, really cool. So that's encouraged me for sure to want to try a little bit of longer form content and talk a little bit more about this in a more detailed way, because every time I go to film a reel on Instagram that's supposed to be like 30 seconds to a minute, I end up babbling on for 5 minutes about one portion of the video I wanted to talk about. And yeah, that doesn't really work in that form. So here we are. It may be harder than I thought to organize all of my thoughts on this, so bear with me. I did have a little bit of sewing experience before I started wanting to sew clothes and apparel. I was a ballet dancer, professional ballet dancer for many years, and grew up in that whole lifestyle. So I sewed my own point shoes. I learned how to make small costume repairs, sew up little holes in things, put hooks and eyes on things. When I was dancing in New York, one of the side jobs that I had was helping the costume department. And I say costume department very lightly. It was a small company. There wasn't a whole costume department, but I did help them create some of the costumes and do repairs and kind of just worked as a sewing assistant doing little things here and there. So I did have some experience, but my dad also has some industrial sewing experience. So he bought me my first sewing machine when I was little, a tiny little Shark. I still remember it. I'm pretty sure it only did a straight stitch or something like that. And unfortunately, he didn't teach me too much about any like skills that I needed for sewing other than, you know, how to thread the bobbin and thread the needle, and you do, you know, a couple stitches forward. You want to do a couple hand stitches first to get the needle in there to make sure the thread doesn't like squirm out, and then do a couple back stitches before you go forward again. So he did teach me that, but he did not give me any patterns. He didn't teach me how to do anything else. And so I didn't have any of that knowledge. So I really do consider myself a beginner. Starting a couple of years ago, I had to reteach myself everything. Hand sewing point shoes is a lot different than sewing apparel. Yeah, so it was quite the experience, but it was really fun. It was frustrating and it was fun and it was intriguing, and I just really fell in love with it. I avoided starting sewing for a long time because I had a lot of other interests. I had a lot of other interests that took up a lot of my time, and I sort of knew the time commitment for sewing. I did not fully know it until I actually tried starting my first project for a dress for a vacation, which I did not finish it before that vacation, like not even close, like maybe 6 months to like almost a year later did I actually finish that first dress. But yeah, I avoided starting sewing for a long time because I just had so many other things that filled my time. I didn't want to pick up another hobby that costed money and took up a lot of time that would take away from all these other things I, was already dedicating effort and money and time to. And it was the boyfriend I was with at the time that actually bought me my first sewing machine and really encouraged me to start sewing. And I just fell in love with it. Other than ballet, which was just, my first true love in life, I would say, completely like passionate, overtook me, identified with it and everything. I haven't felt that way towards another hobby or activity or anything like that deeply until sewing. And it's not exactly the same. I'm not sure that I'm going to make a career out of sewing or anything like that, like I did with ballet, but it really is fulfilling and I really enjoy it, and I can just talk about it for on and on and on, which is part of the reason why I'm making this, to find other people that also feel that way and just kind of join in on that community. Yeah, I want to go into much more detail on all of the projects that I've created and the dresses, because it's mostly dresses. I like dresses. That's what motivates me to sew. I want to go into more detail on all of those things and the patterns and the fabric and the timeline, how long it took me to sew, and all of the little ins and outs. I'll talk a little bit about that today, but I think that should be a separate video just because it's probably, going to be a lot of information and a lot of me talking about it. So for today's video, I think what I want to focus on and talk about is what I call being a delusionally confident beginner. Yes, I have heard many people claim themselves as confident beginners. You can do this more intermediate pattern if you're a confident beginner. I am a delusionally confident beginner, and I'll tell you why I call myself that. I call myself a delusionally confident beginner because what motivated me to start sewing was beautiful, flowy cotton and linen dresses, frolicking in a field of flowers, vacation wear, where it's just like this fantasy Pinterest board type feeling of how you want to style yourself, how you want to feel, all of these aspects coming together of color palette and style and drape and flow of the dress and accessories and atmosphere, all compiling together to give you, that feeling of feeling like your most beautiful, confident, and just your true self. I know a lot of people kind of see the glamorizing and romanticizing your life as, an escapism fantasy. And I guess it can be that in a way, but at least for me, I feel like it helps me become my true self and feel more like myself when all of that comes together and the fantasy, becomes a reality and I can create that garment piece. And it's a wonderful feeling, and it makes me so happy to wear that piece of clothing, especially when I made it. Like it made me happy when I bought the piece of clothing, and I still buy. I still buy, nice dresses and everything. I'm trying to sew and thrift more, and that's definitely helped me buy less and spend less money. And it's a lot more fulfilling when I make it myself. Again, just the time restraint. I haven't created a whole wardrobe at this point. So all of that is the reason why I really started sewing. It was the motivation behind what actually got me to start sewing. I was in that pre-contemplation phase of actually making a behavior change and committing to starting sewing for a very long time. And for months and months and months, I would just watch YouTube videos of other people sewing and sew along videos, and beginners, making their first outfits, or, advanced sewists and what they're able to do and create. And I would just think, like, I want to do that. Like, one day I'm going to be able to do that. Like, I know it. I'm just not ready quite yet. Like, I haven't taken the plunge quite yet. Yeah, making beautiful vacation wear and sundresses and wedding guest dresses, which I'll talk more about as well, is what motivated me to finally start sewing. And so that's why I call myself a delusionally confident beginner, because when you start sewing, you're kind of like supposed to start with beginner patterns and tote bags and pillowcases, and I don't know, maybe an actual pillow. Well, I guess that would be the pillowcase. You make a pillow out of it, duh. But like cushions, things that it's like straight line stitching. There aren't a lot of harder things, and I put quotes around that because some of the things that people, say they hate, I haven't necessarily found very frustrating. Like, I didn't necessarily get it right the first time, but it's not something that I'm scared to continue repeating, like zippers or something like that. Like, I got it really wrong a couple of times and then I got it right, and like now it's great. When people would recommend beginner patterns, they would say, oh, this doesn't have buttonholes, this doesn't have a zipper, this doesn't have darts, this doesn't have this or that. And to me, what I wanted high quality, almost designer, tailored, fitted, detailed dresses. That's what motivated me. Like formal ball gowns. Formal ball gowns is what motivated me to start sewing, with not a ton, some sewing knowledge, but not a ton of sewing knowledge. And so, I think of myself as a very capable person, and I have a lot of grit and determination that I've utilized in ballet and lots of other things throughout my life. I just went for it, and that is why I call myself a delusionally confident beginner. Okay, why am I telling you all of this long-winded story of how I describe myself and what motivated me to start my sewing journey? It's because I don't think that I'm unique or special in that way, that a lot of people who want to sew are motivated by more advanced projects and, skills that require more knowledge that they'll need to use to make the garments that they truly want to make, that's going to be worth it for them, with the time commitment that you need to put into that, the amount of time, effort, blood, sweat, tears. I mean, how many times have we pricked our finger on a pin? Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of times. Yeah, I've definitely bled on the garments that I've made. But to make like all of that worth it, it's like, to me at the time when I started, a pillowcase wasn't worth it. And I get that some people don't want to start with those advanced projects because they're scared to cut into the pretty fabric, and they're scared to like ruin it, or that it won't come out the way that they expected, and that they should save those more advanced projects until they've acquired the skills. I think that's smart. Like there's nothing wrong with that. That's probably the correct way to do it. That's just not my style, like I want to wing it and figure it out, and like I'll do some research and some planning, but then I lose motivation, and so I just go with it. I go with the feeling, and I'll figure it out later, and that is it's a blessing and a curse. And I don't do that for every aspect of life, but for sewing, yeah, that's definitely the way that I kind of do things. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's trial and error. It's your process. It's your journey. Like this specifically is my process and my journey. So I am sharing and telling you all of this because if you're also a delusionally confident beginner or just a beginner and you want to do more intermediate to advanced patterns, then you should do it and you should go for it, and you shouldn't let that fear hold you back. I know it can be really intimidating. I was incredibly intimidated, but we live, in modern times where we have YouTube, we have Google, we now have AI, which, isn't always quite accurate, but it's there as a tool. If you have a sewing mentor, a person in real life that also sews, that can answer questions and give you advice and teach you, like that's even better. I wish I had a sewing mentor. Both of my grandmas sewed and made their own clothes, but they haven't done that, in a really, really long time. So I'd love to talk more about that with them. But for the everyday troubleshooting things, when you are like in it, you're immersed in a project, you only have, 4 hours after work to sew, and you want to hammer it out and get as much done as possible. But because you're a delusionally confident beginner, you run into a problem. And this kind of brings me into the next point that I wanted to make, and the next topic that I wanted to talk about is like my tips and tricks and just like words of wisdom and suggestions if you are a delusionally confident beginner and you want to start making advanced projects and ball gowns and wedding guest dresses as your first couple of projects. Here is what I will say. Whew, I feel like I've been talking for a long time. I hope this video isn't like an hour long. So this is a quote that I love, and I think just sets the tone really well for everything else I'm about to say, because no matter your skill level of sewing, if you're watching this, I'm so glad you're here wherever you're at in your journey. But I think it can apply to us all. And the quote is, "We don't need to be taught, but we do need to be reminded." And that's just to say it's not about the level of knowledge that you have. Some things are obvious. Maybe something I say will be a light bulb moment to you depending where you're at in your sewing journey. But even if it is obvious and you're like, duh, that's just common sense, just being reminded, I think can be helpful too, especially when we're knee deep in those stressful moments of the project. These are my tips and tricks if you're a delusionally confident beginner wanting to start with very advanced or intermediate to advanced projects. You don't have all the skills, you don't know what you're doing, but these are the projects that motivate you. These are what are worth it to spend all of your time sewing on, and these are what you're going to be happy with at the end of the day. In my experience, it's like baking a cake. Like there are instructions. Not all of the instructions are as detailed as I would have liked them to be. There are definitely some that said things like, make sure you snip your curves here, and that for a more advanced sewists, like maybe they wouldn't need to include that in the instructions, and those are just obvious steps that you do. But in my experience, for the most part, the instructions are like baking a cake. You put this in, you put this in, as long as you follow the instructions, which I'm not always the best at doing either, like you're gonna get there. It's how you execute the skill, of what the instruction tells you to do is where the experience level, in my opinion, in my experience, really comes into play. So I'll give you a few examples of this. Well, let's just take installing a zipper, for example. The instructions will say like, install the zipper. And you're like, okay, how do I put the zipper in? Like, what do I do? The first time I watched a video on how to install a zipper, I was like, how is this going to turn into like what we want it to turn into? And, we can say that about the whole entire sewing project. I feel like it's just a bunch of, scraps and things. And then somehow it turns into this beautiful garment. And you're like, I don't know how that happened. And it's like not until the very end when you're almost done with the project that you're like, I feel like I just turned like all of these, coals into diamonds at the very end. It's just like all these scraps and this sack, and you know, everything's inside out, and there are like raw seams and frayed edges everywhere, and then it just turns into this beautiful ball gown. And you're like, huh, I did that. That's pretty cool. I knew I was gonna babble on in this video for far too long. So for the zipper example, I had to stop what I was doing, take a beat, go research how to actually install the zipper properly. And there's a couple different ways I've found how to install a zipper properly. And over time, I've learned different people's tips and tricks for that, which have really helped me figure out what works best for me and what I like doing, what's easiest for me, what's the most intuitive way for me. And so I've evolved, you know, the way that I just do that one step. And that's kind of what I love about sewing as well, that there are multiple correct ways of doing things. People will probably disagree with me on that, but I think if it's good enough and it works, you know, and the garment's not going to fall apart long term, that seems correct enough to me. Like, I like that. And then from there, it's just preference. It's like solving a math equation, right? Like, the teacher should be able to teach you multiple ways of how to do it that make sense to you. And then you have that aha moment, and then you're able to solve the problem and apply it to, you know, future problems. So I really like sewing in that way, but it does take time. You know, the first way that you learn, you only have, you know, a couple hours that night to do your project. You want to move forward in the project. Maybe you even have a deadline that's motivating you, like a wedding or a vacation. You just want to get it done, but you want to do it well. You want to do it correctly for the most part, so it doesn't fall apart and actually fits you well and it looks good. It's going to be the skill level of how you install that zipper that's going to be the thing that slows you down, frustrates you, and just makes the project take a lot longer. Setting proper expectations for yourself. It's going to take a very long time. It's going to be frustrating. You're probably going to have to seam rip a lot of your work that wasn't quite right if you're a little bit of a perfectionist like me and you like really want it done beautifully and right in the ending result. And you're gonna have to do it over. And that can be just extremely frustrating. There were a lot of times where I had to walk away from the project. There were times where I had to completely stop the project and start a whole new project to feel better about myself and my sewing skills so I could rebuild my confidence to go back to the difficult project that I needed to go solve that issue in order to finish that project. So just setting proper expectations, I think, helps with managing your levels of frustration. Because at least for me, once I got frustrated, it's like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. This is supposed to be my relaxing, enjoyable thing after my kind of stressful work day. And when your relaxing activity is more stressful than your like 9-to-5 work day, you know, it's not a relaxing activity anymore, and it's not the best way to unwind. Trying your best not to get frustrated, to know because you're a beginner, you're just gonna run into a lot of obstacles, and that's okay. And you're gonna figure it out. You have all of these tools at your disposal to solve this problem, and you're going to do it. And it might not be in the way you expected at first. It may be not, it's not gonna turn out, but letting go of the outcome, even though that's, you know, sort of what's motivating you, and letting go of those expectations, adjusting them a bit to just saying, you know, like, this might be really bad, making peace with the fact that it might turn out not how you want, and you may have to wear a backup dress to that event or that wedding that you're sewing this dress for, and like, that's okay. And it's okay to be a beginner, to be a bad beginner at things. And I think a lot of people never start. They get in that analysis paralysis phase of never starting something new because they want to be decent at it at first. They want it to be enjoyable. And I think that sometimes we have to go through that muddy phase where we're bad at it and we don't have all the information and it's not enjoyable all of the time. But it's so fulfilling. Like, when it works in the end, it's incredible. That feeling is incredible. And it just takes time, and just trusting the process that you're going to get there. Your skills are going to improve over time. That's what it's really all about, just setting those expectations correctly, because the less frustrated you can get, and the more you can go into, you know, not being emotionally detached from your project. You're a human, you have emotions, but the more you can just go into problem solving mode of like, oh, I've run into an issue now, I don't know how to solve it, let's go research how to solve it. Oh, that didn't work the first time, like I'm gonna have to seam rip that out. Oh, I did that wrong. Oh, there's a new issue that popped up. Oh, okay, I did that wrong too. I didn't fix it the right way. Oh, I just tore through my whole zipper and now I have to remove the whole zipper, which I sewed with 1-inch stitches because I was like, this is never coming out of the dress. This will never break. And then I needed to get it out of the dress because I accidentally ripped through the zipper teeth and it is unusable anymore. Yeah, that happened. So not getting frustrated in those situations allows you to keep going. That's the key, to just keep going. And no matter how many times you have to redo it, or you mess it up, or it's not good enough, if you just keep going, you're going to get there eventually, and you're going to build that resilience tolerance to be able to keep going faster and get over that issue faster the next time. And then of course you're going to be building that skill, so you're going to understand what went wrong, how to prevent that from going wrong in the future, what to look out for, like all of these things. It's just a huge learning process, you know, which again, duh, obvious, but we don't need to be taught, we need to be reminded in those stressful moments. We just need to be reminded. Okay, I want to go back to the baking a cake analogy that I had mentioned previously. So you're reading the instructions, you do this, you do that, you do that, like you're gonna get a cake, you know, that rises if you do everything correctly in the instructions. What I think is different, what makes it different from when you're an advanced sewist, is you don't know how to do the finessing that these more intricate and advanced skills take. Okay, so we talked about, you know, taking the time, adjusting your expectations, trying not to get frustrated, just pushing through and trying to solve, you know, the problem in the most efficient way that you can. All of that is true and it's great, but there are just some things that like you can't get right on the first try. And that can be really frustrating when you really want the project to just be completed and for it to turn out well. And I'll give you an example. We're still recording. My phone hasn't pooped out on me yet. This little dress is the pink rodeo dress that I made for a rodeo I went to here with my friends. And the theme of the night was breast cancer awareness. So when my friends told me to wear something pink, I was like, heck yeah, I'm making a pink rodeo dress. And it was very motivating for me. I was eyeing this pattern for a really long time on Etsy. It's something that's really trendy that I've been seeing for a long time, is this, you know, kind of like 2-panel dress here with the attachments of the gathered side hip skirt part, which gives me, in my opinion, a more flattering silhouette. I'm a little more straight up and down, so having a little extra structure and volume on the hip area is just, I think, is so beautiful. It makes me feel so feminine, like, oh, I love it. And so, but this is something that was a lot harder than I thought. And I have done gathered skirts before. I think my first or second project, but I did a gathered skirt on that. And I would say a gathered skirt is a very beginner friendly option, you know, for a skirt or a dress bottom. You just, you know, do a basting stitch through it, and then you pull the threads and then it gathers, and then you kind of just sew on top of that, whether you're making a waistband or you're attaching it to the bodice for a dress. And this was difficult. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you what I mean by finessing and finagling a little bit. I made the gathers and that was very straightforward. It was very simple. I used a quilting cotton for this. So it's a little bit thicker. It's a little bit more structured. You know, it doesn't drape as maybe nicely as a linen would or a viscose fabric. And most people probably would not recommend using quilting cotton for apparel projects or for garments. But I thought it would be really good to add a lot of structure on the hips, kind of almost like a cotton poplin. And so that's what I went for. And then I was researching, you know, what to use for lining fabrics, and I came across either cotton lawn or cotton voile. I think that's how you say it. And so I ended up getting the cotton voile. I just ordered this off of Amazon, And so this is what it looks like, and you're not going to be able to tell on camera, but it's very thin. Like, it's a very nice summer cotton lining fabric. It gets over 100 degrees here in the summer, and so I wanted something thin and breathable, and I was looking at my other dresses that I didn't sew that I bought, and I'm like, what is this type of lining fabric? Like, they're all kind of similar. I don't know exactly what it is, which is another point that I'll get to. This is what I think it is the cotton voile. So the weight of the quilting cotton and the weight of the cotton voile is very different. The quilting cotton is thicker and a little bit heavier, and the voile is a little squirmier and it's a lot lighter. And so I guess I learned that makes the difference when you're sewing the two together. Get this open here, I swear that the zipper works. All right, I'll fix that later. I hand sewed the lining in, so that's why that happened. The zipper got caught on a thread there. It was just really difficult to sew the inside right here. I think I sewed it on this side, and I just redid it over and over and over again. I think I spent a whole night after work just re-sewing this area over and over and over. And all you're doing is sewing right side to right side the gathers of the skirt in a semicircle shape like this. And in theory, that's not difficult. I don't understand, you know, even now why it was so difficult. But because this fabric was thinner, it was harder to pull it flat so it wouldn't get bunched up in the machine as I was sewing it, like both pieces, the gathered pieces flat, and not having like this part of the gather like get it caught in it up there. That was just really difficult to do that on the curve, you know, making sure all the gathers were being sewn flat and even, and then the inside of the fabric I guess I had to worry about too. Like, I made sure that like part of the fabric down here wasn't getting caught in it, but it was like little tiny bits that were being folded in right here, and I was sewing over that. And in some areas I was like, well, that doesn't really show on the outside, so I don't know if I really need to fix it, but I ended up just going back and fixing all of it to do it the right way and to make it look pretty on the outside and the inside. I guess, you know, I've experienced as I acquire more sewing skills and I get more advanced is that my projects are starting to look beautiful on the inside as well as the outside, which I didn't realize was important, especially when you're, you know, first making the projects and you're just so happy to finish one. You're like, well, it looks great on the outside, but the inside just like, ugh. Like, don't look in there. Don't let anyone look in there. Like, zip yourself up. don't let them see it. Like, it's a train wreck. Like, don't take it to get dry cleaned. Like, they're gonna be like, what is this? So yeah, the gathers were something that I had to finesse the fabric under the sewing walker foot and the needle so much to just get it to lay flat and actually look nice on the inside and the outside. So that's something that I had to redo quite a bit. You know, zippers, that's something that a lot of people have trouble with. I got to another project where I installed a zipper, and I don't think I was using the invisible zipper foot at this point, but I had it just in case I needed it. I didn't think that I needed it at first. I did. And little did I know, I was accidentally stitching over the zipper teeth. I was catching them a little bit with the needle. When I wasn't wearing the dress, I could get the zipper up all of the way. It was when I put the dress on to try it on, I couldn't get it up past the waist seam, basically, because the gathers, it was just too thick for the type of zipper that it was, and so it wasn't zipping up. But when it was just on my sewing table, I could get the zipper up all the way to the top. I could not get it back down. And this, to me, I was like, what's even happening here? Like, what's going on? I can't remember if I asked AI or Google or tried to YouTube this, but I could not figure out why the zipper would go up but it wouldn't go down. That was quite a mystery to me for quite some time. And what was worse is that I got stuck in the dress trying it on. So when I finally, there's one time where I got the zipper over the waist gathers and I got it up to the top and it would not go down. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I think I might have to cut myself out of this dress. And so I wrestled with that dress for 45 minutes trying to get it off of me, trying to unzip it off of me. That was an interesting night. That was a very frustrating night. I'm not quite sure if I could have managed those frustrations just by setting my expectations properly then. But you know, it happened and it was learning experience. And eventually when I did manage to get the dress off of me somehow, I think I ended up like shimmying it around and like pulling it down enough and then taking my seam ripper and just starting to like seam rip some of the things while it was still on me, stuck on me. And that's how I finally got it off. But I realized that I had stitched over some of the teeth, and that's most likely why the zipper was not zipping down. It would go up, it wouldn't go down. I don't know why it works that way, but it did. Long story short, a lot of other trial and error happened of me trying to fix it, and I ended up, seam ripping the areas where I accidentally sewed over the zipper and just like restitching in those small areas. I fixed all of the areas where I had accidentally sewn over the zipper teeth, so that wasn't an issue anymore. But now it was the gathers being too thick that when I had it on myself, it was just too tight. It was just not zipping up past the waist seam easily. I didn't want to be stressed, wondering, is my dress gonna zip up on the wedding day? I was a guest at the wedding, and so I just didn't want that stress. I wanted to do it the right way, so I was willing to redo it. So I painstakingly started seam ripping this zipper out, and I wasn't watching closely enough, and I seam ripped straight through the zipper. Yeah, and there was a huge hole, and I tried to patch it up, and it did not work. And so I had to rip that whole entire zipper out. I was so frustrated at this point, I started another sewing project because I just needed a break from that dress. It was so frustrating. And so I started this dress, which I'm wearing right now, which I called at the time, and I still might call it, my instant gratification dress, because it was a pretty easy make. I still had to learn some things, but this was not as difficult as the wedding guest dress, the gold one back there that I'm talking about with the zipper issue. So yeah, I switched to a different project. I switched back when I finally got the zipper seam ripped out all the way. I put a new zipper in, I used the invisible zipper foot, and it's just like, why did I not use the invisible zipper foot from the beginning? It worked like a charm. It was super easy to put the zipper in. I eventually smoothed down the gathers, and yeah, it zipped. Moral of the story, it zipped like it's supposed to. So those are two very long-winded examples that I have, but that just goes to show that it does take some finessing of the skills until you've kind of mastered or have just gotten better at that skill to be able to do it correctly where it works the first time, and then move on to the next ingredient in your list, of baking your cake and eventually getting one of your dream dresses right here. Give yourself time. Give yourself so much time to run into issues, time to make mistakes, time to research those mistakes, time to work out your frustrations, and then time to, finally get it right. It's going to take so much longer when you're a delusionally confident beginner doing more advanced projects, starting with more advanced projects. So I believe for one of the wedding guest dresses that I made, the wedding was in the middle of May and I started in February, and I was dedicating like at least 3 days a week after work. So like 4 to 5 hours after work, I would work on that dress, and then sometimes on the weekends as well. And so it was a couple of months that it took me to put all of that together. Yes, I did stop and work on my instant gratification project in between. That's something I needed in order to finish that dress because it was so frustrating. So that was part of my process of actually finishing that dress. Yeah, if you can give yourself more time, I know things that motivate us to start the project are special events like weddings, like vacations, like birthdays, like baby showers, rodeos, whatever it is for you. Just, if you can, try to give yourself as much time as possible and be realistic with your skill level and how much figuring it out time you think that you're going to need. All right, I've already talked for almost an hour about this, and I haven't made very many points yet, so I'm going to try to be a little bit more clear and concise moving forward. We'll see how this goes. Another thing I wanted to talk about is something that is so important, And I've seen other creators and other sewists also talk about how important this step is, that can really take your project from looking like it was kind of homemade and something's just not quite right about it, to actually what you see in stores and are, those dream dresses that you're wanting to make. And that is the content of your fabric, what type of fabric it is. And as a new sewist, I was like, I know fabric, like there's cotton, there's linen, there's plastic, there's, polyester, there's bamboo. I really wanted to be sewing with natural fibers, natural fabrics. So, cotton, linen, wool, I don't know, maybe silk one day. Those were kind of more of what I wanted to gravitate towards and to use. But I did not realize that there's like all of these subcategories under the umbrella of cotton and linen and all these different types of fabrics. And I'm not just talking about blends. I'm talking about there's quilting cotton, there's cotton lawn, cotton poplin, cotton voile, and they all have these different kind of drapes. That's what I've realized and figured out is kind of what's making the difference. They have different densities and thicknesses to them, different weights, and they have different drapes, and those probably, go together a little bit. But in my mind, that's how I kind of can describe what the differences are and why it matters in the projects and how that contributes to the garment actually looking how you want it to look. I did not know this at all. So when I first started sewing, and I was like a kid in a candy shop, and I went into Joann's, may she rest in peace. I went into Joann's and I just saw seas and aisles of cotton. Cotton everywhere, cotton in this color, cotton in that color, cotton of the rainbow, this pattern, that pattern, flannel. Okay, I did know the difference of cotton flannel. That one I was like, this feels like pajamas, like this feels soft. But in the other ways, like, I'm a big texture person. I shop by texture. And so I feel like I should have known this, but I would, go into the store and I would feel this fabric. And I don't know, in my mind, I was like, oh, maybe it just needs a wash. Maybe it just needs some fabric softener. It wasn't obvious to me that this would not be the most comfortable apparel fabric. And it was definitely not obvious to me at all that it was going to severely affect the outcome of my project in my likability of it, in how it looked overall, how it draped, me wanting to wear it day in, day out, just the overall finish of the project. It was going to be a huge factor. What the pattern that I bought and what the pattern looked like when they made it on the picture, or even other people that have made that pattern. And I'm like, why is my thing not looking like their thing? It's probably the fabric content. And so it was something that was really important. But unfortunately, my little kid in the candy store brain saw all of these quilting cottons. I did not know that they were quilting cottons at the time. I just thought it was cotton. And I bought so many. I bought so many quilting cottons because right when I started sewing, Joann's announced that they were going out of business, which was so sad. And I realize it's not as sad as if you have been sewing for a long time and that was your main resource of where you're getting your fabric from and suddenly it was disappearing. Like, I cannot even imagine going through that, but it was still very sad to have this, huge in-person fabric store where you could go and feel and touch all of the fabrics be closing. However, so at the time this was happening, they were having their liquidation sale. And so not only did I see seas and seas of beautiful fabrics, they were all clearanced. They were all on sale. So I bought a lot. I bought so many quilting cottons, like almost my whole collection of fabric is quilting cotton. And then, about 2 years, probably not that long ago, into the sewing journey, I realized, oh, I actually don't want to use quilting cotton for these projects. Like, I think that's holding my projects back from looking really nice. So that's the dilemma I'm having right now. I'm not going to be wasting that fabric. I do think that you can still use quilting cotton. It's going to be, a little bit denser. It's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more structured. But I think for certain patterns and certain looks that you're going for, it can still look really, really good and really, really professional. And it's actually helped me a lot to see other creators and sewists online, and they say that this beautiful dress that they made, they use quilting cotton. And I was like, okay, thank you. It can still turn out really beautiful. Like, this is evidence that it's gonna be okay. I'm just rolling with it. I am going to use up all of my quilting cotton for different apparel projects that I want to make. You know, what kind of rolls right along into that is that I've seen that it's really popular to be, you know, very eco-friendly, but to also save money, to use thrifted fabrics, specifically thrifted bed sheets, curtains, tablecloths, you know, pillowcases as fabric to make your sewing projects out of. And I have done that, and it's incredible. And it's even like more fulfilling when you not only make something, but you make something out of something that was thrifted for like $5. It's really, really cool. But you don't always know what the content of your thrifted fabric is. And this is an issue that I'm sort of running into, is, you know, not knowing exactly what it is, what type of blends. Not only does that matter to wash it and maintain it, because, you know, you have to wash different fabrics differently. Sometimes they can't go in the dryer if they're gonna melt. It matters because they kind of work a little bit differently in the way that you sew them. And I don't know if other people also have this issue, you know, sewing things a little bit differently. Maybe it's just more intuitive as you have more experience. It probably is, but that's something that I have to keep in mind as well, where I'll get a bed sheet and it says cotton, or it's a cotton viscose blend or something like that, but it's not stretchy, but it's wiggly. Like, it doesn't maintain its shape very well, and maybe that's when you're supposed to use interfacing. It just turns out a little bit distorted in the way that you sew it because it's so wiggly. It doesn't keep a straight line. So that's affected a few of my projects. But yeah, the fabric content can be very important to the overall look of the project, and also the way that you sew it and the way that you wash it and maintain it. Something else that I've run into recently is making alterations on yourself. So this is something that has been a little bit frustrating to me, because something that I probably could have started out with, which again was not motivating to me at the time, but started out with in sewing, was just making alterations on clothes I already had. Some clothes don't fit quite right, and that's okay. I'm a petite person. I wear a lot of double zeros, and so everything is like a potato sack on me. Like, it's very rare when something actually fits me properly, and it's not like child's clothing, and it's elegant and womanly, and, you know, all of the things that I like in a garment. And it's a nicer piece that I don't have to go get taken to the tailor to get taken in. And I will do that from time to time if I think that it's worth it, but it's pretty expensive, at least here where I am, to get my clothes tailored and taken in certain places. And so I just don't do that very often. And now that I sew, I'm like, there's absolutely no point in spending that money. Have I taught myself those skills of how to do that yet? And no, not quite yet. So I had already successfully completed these other projects, somehow got to this rodeo dress. I think the girl who created the pattern is just much more curvy than I am. She has a much more hourglass figure, and the bust to hip to waist ratio, I could already tell in the measurements. I was like, well, I'm a this and this, and I'm a this and this, and this in the hips, and I'm not at the point, you know, where I can merge different pattern sizes together and feel confident in doing that, where it's going to give me the right shape that I want, that the pattern is intended to give. And that's why I picked the pattern in the first place. So that's probably something I should be doing, is making adjustments to the pattern from the beginning. But what I'm doing right now is I'm just picking the one that's closest to my size. I'm making the garment up to the point, you know, before it's made enough where you can try it on, and then trying to make the necessary adjustments. And now I'm, you know, adjusting those adjustments onto the pattern, so then I can make it correctly from the beginning when I decide to use the pattern again. That was something I didn't know how to do as well, that seemed very daunting and overwhelming. How is everyone making alterations on themselves? Like, how are you doing that? Like, I was pinching and, you know, squeezing in certain areas and trying to pin from behind me. And I'm like, I'm gonna stab myself. Like, how are other people doing this? So I don't always have someone else here with me to pinch certain areas and all of that. Luckily, my boyfriend helped me when he was here for this last dress. But yeah, I had to figure that out, how to make alterations on myself. And I still don't know the most efficient way to do that. I asked that question on my Instagram page, and a lot of people commented and gave, you know, solutions to that issue. I don't think any of those solutions were more efficient than what I did. I think it's kind of one of those things where it's like to each their own of what they prefer doing. But yeah, a lot of people recommended doing the tape thing, or basically making a pattern block for bodices that fits you, and then you just alter the neckline to whatever pattern you're trying to make. And I'm like, well, didn't I buy a pattern so I wouldn't have to make my own pattern? Like, I thought I did. I thought I wasn't gonna have to pattern draft off the bat being a beginner. So yeah, that's something to look out for, is that you're going to have to learn to do alterations to the pattern, unless the pattern just happens to fit you perfectly, which we love when that happens. But I'm learning for my body type, most of the time it does not happen that way, and I have to make at least some alterations to it to make it fit me right. And that's why we're making our own clothes in the first place, right? It's to make custom clothes that fit you the way clothes are meant to fit. Yeah, as a delusionally confident beginner, I did not know what some of the terms meant in the instructions. That was a bit of a decoding process. So I had to Google and research a lot of that. And not only did I not know what some terms meant in the pattern, which sometimes they give you a little key in there which defines each of the terms so you can understand it better, but this goes back into having to research things for the skills that you don't know how to do, or things you don't know how to troubleshoot. You don't always know what the correct words are to search to do that research. So that's a bit of a process as well, is I don't even know how to describe the issue that I'm running into, how to keep fabric from pinching, sewing under itself in this way, rip, toll, like, what do I even search? What do I even search for this? Another thing about the alterations, doing alterations on yourself without a dress form, like, how are people doing hems? Like, that is something that's a complete mystery to me. When I bend over to try to measure, like, it ruins, you know, kind of how the dress is falling. And so you can't do a hem on yourself, you can't measure it. So I'm kind of just trusting at this point that it's even. Sometimes I'll lay it out on the floor, cut it in certain areas it seems a little too long, and call it a day and hem it. And so far that's worked for me. I'm sure the dress bottoms aren't completely perfectly even, but it's good enough to where no one's commented on it. So, and that's like the last step of the process too, right? Is when you hem the dress. And so at that point you're like so close to being done and you just want to be done. And so at least to me, I'm like done with the perfectionism at that point. I'm like, it just needs to be good enough. How to work your sewing machine. Like, you know how to work it. Like, you're sewing along, you're doing your stitch, you know how to thread it, you know how to put the thread around your bobbin, you know you shouldn't go at super speed even though you want to, you know how to do a couple of other things like change the tension, the stitch length, but sometimes it just starts doing weird stuff and you don't know what it means, and you don't know why you switch to a different thread or a different fabric and it starts going haywire, like adjusting the tension and the stitch length and the needle. I've broken 2 needles trying to sew over way too many layers of fabric for what that needle could handle. I've punched too big of holes into the fabric because it was too thin and delicate, and I was using just a standard needle because I didn't know I needed a different needle, and it made giant holes in my fabric, and I was like, oh, well, that doesn't seem right. That's not very visually appealing, so we should probably look that up. So yeah, just kind of knowing the ins and outs of your sewing machine. Again, type of person where like you're not gonna know it's going to be a problem until you run into the problem, and then you just have to figure it out. You have to fix it. Definitely that one, you know, you kind of have to fly by the seat of your pants, in my opinion, and just wait until you get hit with the problem too to figure that out. But something to expect for sure. At some point, your sewing machine will probably just start going haywire, and it's not sewing, it's not moving, but it's still going up and down, and things are getting like a rat's nest under there, and you're just like, what's happening? Like, why? I was so close to finishing this step, and then that happened. So definitely a possibility. I have been babbling on for so long about this, but I really hope that it was incredibly relatable and hopefully entertaining for you. If you have watched up until this point, thank you so much. I'm glad that you're here. If you have any comments or any questions or any suggestions or just, yeah, encouragement, leave it down below in the comments, and I'd love to see you in the next video. Bye.